Good afternoon, distinguished participants, and we would like to welcome you for today's webinar on gender implication of COVID-19 on women's entrepreneurship, supporting SMEs and women-owned businesses in corporate value chain. It's our pleasure to have you all on the call today. For about 5-6 months now, we've been working with the IFC to help close gender gap within the Nigerian market. In May this year, we hosted the first webinar in this series. It was about the gender implication of COVID-19, and it was more on the corporate environment, work policy, HR organizations can put together to proffer or to help women generally limit or reduce the impact of COVID-19 in their disposition of duty. In case you're looking to hear a feminine voice on this call, you've not joined the wrong seminar or webinar. You don't necessarily just have an approach that everybody must really pull their resources together to help close gender gaps or to address gender issues within the ecosystem and also my name is Toby. I know you're seeing today I'll be your anchor person and I'll be handing over to Mr. Bola just in a moment. Just to let you know that we have a host of thought leaders who are joining us today for this conversation, and it promises to be very exciting. So I would urge everybody who is
Looks like we lost Toby.
Okay, I was wondering if it was just me. Okay.
Yeah, the line was chopping up for a bit before he got disconnected. Clifford Olumide, is anyone close by that maybe can fill in for him? Olumide?
Olumide is on mute. Thank you, Bola. If you allow me, this is Anne from IFC. I'll just fill in for Toby so that we can carry on. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Toby mentioned earlier, this is our second webinar in a series that we are co-hosting between International Finance Corporation and the Nigeria Stock Exchange. And it's part of our Nigeria2Equal Gender Programme, where we are bringing together private sector companies to reduce gender gaps across employment and entrepreneurship. Today's webinar is going to focus on the corporate, the private sector's role in promoting and women-owned businesses, specifically how we can better get women-owned businesses integrated in our corporate value chains and how we can help remove the barriers, including access to finance, for instance, that a lot of women are faced with. I would like now to get us started, and we have Bola from the Nigeria Stock Exchange who will be opening this webinar with opening remarks. Over to you, Bola.
Thank you, Anne. Good afternoon, distinguished participants. I trust you're all keeping well and safe. I'd like to warmly welcome you all to this webinar on the gender implications of COVID-19 entrepreneurship, themed supporting SMEs and women-owned businesses in corporate value chains, which is jointly organized by the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the International Finance Corporation. I am especially grateful to all our panel discussants and all our participants for joining us today, despite their very busy schedule. Over the years, the NSC and IFC have collaborated extensively to galvanize the private sector towards the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. One of such collaborations is in the annual International Women's Day Symposium and Ring the Bell for Gender Equality. Earlier this year, at the 2020 International Women's Day Symposium, held in March, this collaboration evolved into the Nigeria2Equal Programme, established to close gender gaps across the private sector. The Nigeria2Equal initiative, which was kicked off in May with a webinar that explored the gender implications of COVID-19 for women as employees, the conversation back then ensued wherein we talked about highlighting the differential socioeconomic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on women and men, with women predicted to face more negative impacts. The COVID-19 pandemic has continued to disrupt economic activities all over the world and lives as well. And the informal sector and small and medium enterprises are at the center of this crisis. According to a recent study done by Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, more than 50% of SMEs have already lost significant revenue and are at risk at actually being out of business altogether within the next 3 months. And women, unfortunately, are unequally represented in this sector. Sectors being the informal as well as the small, medium enterprise sector. In developing countries, the entrepreneurial nature of most female-dominated businesses, which right now stands at about 80% of women are either self-employed or working in some family business versus men, which stands at 60%, has limited the capacity for women to cope during the current pandemic, especially in situations of limited public services. Entrepreneurs in Nigeria especially face challenges in accessing finance to sustain or expand their businesses. With a high level of female participation in the entrepreneurship, and in 2019, OECD puts female participation at about 58% compared to men's 45%. Experts actually anticipate that COVID-19 crisis will further hinder the progress that's been made so far in advancing women's entrepreneurship in Nigeria. To this end, we're pleased to be hosting the second webinar in the Nigeria2Equal program. This webinar has brought together industry experts to discuss the business case for gender inclusive practices in corporate value chains and strategies for improving the participation of women-owned and run SMEs in helping corporates also build stronger and more resilient value chains, especially again in this prevailing pandemic situation. This webinar also seeks to explore best practice solutions for integrating women-owned or run SMEs in private procurement and distribution operations. At the NSC, we prioritize the issues of gender equality in line with our commitment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, specifically goal number 5, which focuses on gender equality and women's empowerment. Much more, we continue to play our traditional role as an enabler of capital flow from areas of surplus to deficit through a recent launch of our growth board to support SMEs to access capital within our market and especially again in these unprecedented times. We're very proud to be strengthening our partnership with IFC to provide guidance and support for women entrepreneurs in Nigeria. We hope that this session today takes us further in achieving the strategic objective of launching the Nigeria2Equal program, which includes promoting equality across all spheres of business, especially in the private sector, and empowering female business owners to not only survive, but to thrive during and after the global pandemic. We have invited a diverse group of speakers in different fields ranging from finance to supply chain, entrepreneurship, policies and programs. And I'm very confident that all the speakers today have a firsthand experience of some of the unique challenges faced by female entrepreneurs in Nigeria and will inspire us to greater levels of awareness and responsibility. Distinguished guests, speakers, and participants, thank you for your attention, and I wish you all a fruitful deliberation. Back to you, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you, Bola, for opening for us this webinar with those wonderful remarks. I mean, we are equally proud and excited to be partnering with the Nigeria Stock Exchange. We acknowledge, your strengths and your convening power, and we are very, very hopeful and looking forward to taking this off. I'm now going to invite my colleague, Angela Kariuki, who leads our Sourcing to Equal program a country program that we run here in Kenya on gender inclusive sourcing strategies with the private sector. And Angela is going to set the context for what is going to be an interesting and exciting discussions thereafter. Over to you, Angela.
Thank you very much, Anne, and hello to everybody on the call today. I hope you can hear me okay. As Anne has mentioned, my name is Angela Kariuki, and I work on the Sourcing to Equal Kenya project, which is a project really where we're working with women-owned SMEs to grow them by increasing their access to markets through corporate procurement opportunities. So what I'm going to do is I want to share my screen, and really what I want to share is picking up from what Bola has talked about in relation to the pandemic having different impact on women as opposed to men. I'm hoping you can see my screen. Oh, it looks like something is loading.
Yes, we can.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I would like us to look at is just to touch on how pandemics affect women and men differently. And then we'll now really dive deep into looking at the impact of COVID-19 on women entrepreneurs and really understanding what are their challenges and what are their needs. And then we'll just end with some examples of corporate responses to the pandemic that are supporting SMEs that they have within their value chain. So, I mean, from past pandemics, we've already seen that the impact is disproportionately more on women than it is on men. And COVID-19 is revealing and exacerbating already existing gender gaps in economic security, also around health and safety, and also in decision making. And this is really around a couple of key areas. I mean, the first one we can see that the literature is informing us that women are spending 3 times the amount of time on unpaid care work than men, and this is really on young children, or it could be on elderly parents in this time that we have been confined to our homes, and that of course reduces the time they have available to put towards their businesses or towards paid work. And this situation for some people may actually prompt the women to leave their jobs and take on care full time. Another area where we can see differences in the impact of the pandemic between women and men, of course, with the confinement and restrictions on movement and a lot of people being confined in their homes, there has been an increased exposure to domestic violence. So there have been more incidences of gender-based violence, and literature informs us that the surge has actually been as much as by 20%, and of course this impacts on the health and safety of the women and consequently the ability to contribute to economic activities. And we can also see that the liquidity constraints are already amplifying a situation that was already, there was already a gap before the pandemic, and a gap of about 1.48 trillion in emerging markets faced by women-owned businesses, as I've said, in emerging markets. And we can also see that women are less likely to use the internet. 17% are less likely to use the internet, but coupled with that, 20% are less likely to own a smartphone from which they can even access the internet. So the digital divides continue growing between women and men in this pandemic. Having highlighted that, I'd like us to move on to then look at the impact of COVID-19 on women entrepreneurs. And here we'll be trying to understand some of the challenges that they have and some of the needs that they've expressed. And based on research and literature that's already out there, we've categorized these needs and challenges in 7 key categories. So the first of this is financial, and I'll talk about all of these in a little bit more detail in the next slide. The second is supply chain disruptions. The third is around the shifting business operations to a digital model. The fourth one is around adjusting operations, especially in line with the restrictions on movement. The fourth one is around business networks and where women can access advice. The sixth one is around mental health, and the seventh one is around employee support. So to look at each of these in a little bit more detail, if we start with the first category, and that's the financial one, 90% of women SMEs have faced a drop in their revenue, so a decrease in their sales, but there's also a reduction in cash flow, with a lot of them reporting a survival rate of between 1 to 3 months. And then there's this is also coupled with demand plummeting in sectors where women are most operating. Literature shows us that women tend to operate in sectors such as hospitality, tourism, retail, and also in the informal sectors. And a lot of these sectors have been really hard hit during the pandemic. In addition to that, there's also insufficient access to finance, but also working capital. And of course, this was a need that was already there before even the pandemic. So this is really an exacerbated need. And the need that women have expressed that they would want in this time is urgent financing that would need to be flexible. And the flexibility here is addresses the challenges that women already have in terms of accessing finance and not necessarily having access to collateral. When we look at supply chain disruptions, we've got about 62% of small businesses being unable to deliver on contracts that they already had. And this is brought about by logistic challenges. To add to this, for a lot of women that may be operating in the retail space, there's also inventory delays and shortages. And then, of course, with the restrictions that we have with movement, there are also labor shortages and shipping delays, and which cause disruptions to fulfillment of orders. And then in addition to this, there's also the inability to source the raw materials for the products in the first place, especially where products are sourced from international markets. If we look at the challenges and needs around the shift to a digital business model, 87% of women-owned SMEs are actually planning to sell online because with COVID-19, a lot of them have had to shut down their physical premises, or their customers can't get to them as they did before. So they have expressed a need in increasing their knowledge of e-commerce, and that could be around either creating a website if they don't have one before, or it could be expanding a current one that they have, optimizing it, or it could be having a presence on marketplaces such as Jumia. They've also expressed the need to be able to communicate in a timely manner with customers, especially around availability of goods and even delivery, especially before customers will probably go into the premises, and that communication would be a lot easier. But they've expressed a need to be able to communicate with these customers, with their own customers clearly. And then those that are already, for some of those that are selling online, it's important to note that some of them did express that they would not expect a downturn in sales. But then, of course, this is very dependent on the industry in which that they are operating in. Very closely related to the shift in digital businesses is the needs around adjusting operations. And we've seen over 1/3 of women SMEs wanting to adapt their product and services to better meet the changing needs of their customers. This may involve having to diversify supplier networks, so looking for new suppliers, but may also involve using technology to reach other players within their value chain. So this is not just the customers, but also the suppliers and distributors. And this may be through something like online payment systems, systems, which some of them didn't necessarily have before. It may be through mobile phones, and in previous slides we've talked about a difference in terms of access to mobile phones between women and men. Excuse me, and it also may be around adopting alternative distribution channels. Alternative distribution channels, e.g. around delivery, because delivery has become really key in this time when, again, with restrictions in movement, a lot of customers have not been able to go into physical premises like they did before. And then there's also needs that women have expressed in terms of where to access advice and networks that may support during this time. So it's clear there's a need to shift the digital business model, but for a lot of women, they're not sure exactly where to start. And even before the pandemic, they were already operating within smaller and less diverse networks than men, and are also less likely to know where to go for advice, especially on crisis management, or even on strategies that may help with the business resilience. And then there's also the need for technical assistance to help the businesses pivot the business model. And this is really to be able to adapt to, it could be around adapting to different products and services, or it could be with introducing technology within the operations. Then around mental health, we can see that there's an increased anxiety that the situation with COVID is obviously reducing productivity, and 27% of women and SMEs already have increased care demands, which, as I mentioned before, is reducing the time spent on businesses. And there's also uncertainty surrounding how to manage risks and losses related to the pandemic, and also how to provide some cushioning or some protection for employees. And then the final category of challenges and needs is around employee support. So more than a third of small businesses have reduced the number of employees that they have had before the pandemic hit. And even with those that have been left, there has been a decrease in employee morale, but also restrictions based on curfews and such restrictions on movement also affect the productivity, but there may also maybe the inability to work remotely, also due to even the employees' own family care and responsibility. And then there's also the need to, the financial need, the working capital to really support these businesses to be able to pay the few employees that they've actually been left with. So
one more minute, Angela.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm actually just moving to the next slide. Okay. So having talked about those challenges, then really it's a case of just looking at some corporate responses that SMEs, responses that corporates have taken in light of COVID-19 that support SMEs, and including women SMEs in their value chains. So here we have examples in Kenya, of course, because that's where our project is based, but we also have some global ones. And I'm not going to go into all of them individual because a lot of them are similar, but you'll see with the banks, and that's the likes of Stanbic Bank, Kenya Commercial Bank, and ABSA, a lot of them have introduced measures around loan holidays, and when those holidays expired, they introduced debt restructuring support, and this is really to help SMEs in managing cash flows. And you have even the likes of ABSA that put a commitment out there that they'll actually be paying their supplier invoices between 7 and 14 days. And then at a global level, you have companies such as Primark, who actually established a fund to cover wages for overseas workers. This was at the beginning of the pandemic, even where orders were cancelled. And even you'll see companies such as Primark and even Unilever extending payment terms to suppliers to cover them for stock that they had already that was already ready. And Unilever also extending credit to small-scale businesses, retail businesses within their value chain. And then you'll also see some companies like Walmart, which is a supermarket chain, also offering rent relief for some of the small businesses that it hosts within its stores. And then we also saw companies like Schneider, which is a company that does electric audits, really just increasing the communication they have between suppliers and partners to really be able to validate continued service. So this is really reaching out to the suppliers, some of which are SMEs, just to really assess and evaluate how they continue the service, but also leveraging manufacturing footprint elsewhere, which may also then create SMEs in those other areas where that opportunity may not have been before. And I'm going to stop there. This analysis really has been of public information on COVID responses that we undertook, but I'm sure you would be able to relate with some of the examples as corporates within Nigeria have also introduced that may be supporting SMEs and women SMEs in corporate value chains. And I'm going to pause there and I'll pass it back to yourself, Anne. And thank you.
Thanks, Angela, for setting the context. And indeed, these are extraordinary times calling for extraordinary measures, especially where we are looking to ensure that we keep the SMEs going and support them to build back better. As supply chains get more and more disrupted, corporates can actually increase the number of SMEs that supply them locally to broaden their supplier base. And at the same time, they can increase the number of women-owned businesses that access either procurement or support them in their distribution networks to keep them afloat, and also increase their further support to ensure that they survive and build back better. Thank you so much for that presentation, Angela. We now move swiftly to our panel discussion, and I'm privileged to be moderating this discussion with a group of distinguished panelists. We have 5, and I'll quickly make a very, very quick introduction. Our first panelist is Soromi Dayo, also known as Dayo George. She's the Director of Corporate Affairs and Sustainable Business at Unilever, in charge of Ghana and Nigeria. You're welcome, Dayo. We also have Adinike Adeyemi, who is the Executive Director of FIT Foundation, where she works with women SMEs, helping them access finance and also support them with capacity building. Good to have you, Adinike. Our third panelist is Yeshua Raso. We are very happy to have gender diversity and honored to have you, Yeshua, on our panel today. Yeshua is the country director for We Connect International in Nigeria, a non-profit international that works with women-owned businesses and multinational companies to increase procurement opportunities for those women, and he'll be talking to us a lot about what We Connect has learned in this space. Our fourth panelist is Peter Bamkole. Peter is the director of the Enterprise Development Center at the Lagos Business School, Pan-Atlantic University, where he works with women-owned businesses as well as men-owned businesses, SMEs, with a lot of capacity building, upskilling, and he will be talking to us about the evidence linking, acquisition of skills and upskilling and the performance of, small and medium-owned businesses, especially those are founded and owned by women as well. Last but not least, we have from Ayodele Olojede from Access Bank. And Ayo is the Director of Business Banking there, where she works extensively with SMEs and women-led businesses. And she will be talking to us about how we can actually close the gap in one of the leading barriers to women's ability to start and run business, which is access to finance. And now we'll go straight into the panel discussion. And my first question goes to you, Yeshua. We Connect has extensively done a lot of research and provided us in the development space with a lot of evidence on how we can get women-owned businesses supplying the private sector. And one of your research tells us that just 1% of corporate, private sector procurement globally goes to women-owned businesses. And you've done a lot of work to encourage companies to open up their procurement spaces for women and building the capacity of women-owned businesses to be able to service those opportunities. Now, we have COVID-19, which means that the barriers that women faced now are even bigger. And I just wanted to know, could you shed some light on these barriers on women's access to procurement opportunities in corporate value chains? And how do you think the pandemic has affected those women-owned businesses that work with the private sector in procurement?
Yeah, thank you very much, Anne. Thanks to IFC and the Nigerian Stock Exchange team for putting this together. As you mentioned, my name is Ooreofeoluwa. I'm the country director for We Connect International in Nigeria, and interestingly, I'm the only male country director in We Connect, so that goes for something. Well, basically, what We Connect does is we identify, build the capacity, and certify women-owned businesses outside the United States of America and connect them, as you rightly said, to procurement opportunities coming from large corporate organizations. Now, the vision that we have revolves around everything we are talking about in this webinar, which is that if you don't link women to the value chains of large corporate organizations, you can't really empower them. They'll be outside the scheme. But the major challenges, the major barriers that restrain women from taking advantage of procurement and entrepreneurial opportunities coming from large corporates and the value chains of corporations, there are very many. I remember a research that was done last year, World Bank, and quite a few. I was part of that research, and quite a few things were identified. But I want to just point on 3 key things, especially in Nigeria. The first one is low capacity. That's the truth. It's the first problem. Most of the women have less capacity to handle larger businesses than their male counterparts. We've seen this repeated over and over in the development field. In one particular case, we brought in a major corporate to purchase products from women, and none of the women could meet the specifications of that product. We ended up going back to male counterparts. So it's a major problem, low technical capacity to actually meet up to demands. The next major issue is, it's a standard fact, it's arguable, but it's the truth. Low collaboration levels amongst women. It's a major barrier. There are some kinds of, it's a major barrier. It's a major barrier. The level of collaboration amongst women-owned businesses, and I work in this area, and we're trying to push that now. The collaboration levels are very low. And then access to finance. Now that's a whole different story that I'm sure the banks will talk about, but access to sufficient finance to compete with male counterparts, they just don't have that. But when you mention how has COVID-19 impacted women-owned businesses when it comes to value chains, I think from our own recent research that we conducted globally, especially in Nigeria, I think we got statistics that 85% of our women-owned businesses that are members of We Connect International said that they were adversely affected by COVID-19. And of this 85%, over 50% said that their major problem was in accessing products, raw materials, and services to actually deliver on contracts. That's what they said was their major challenges. So, well, the economy is opening up a bit, so much of that has changed. But I think it still brings to question the fact that it brings to mind the question that we need to create, which is why this is fantastic. We need to create more structures and systems that absorb women-owned businesses into the value chains of large corporations in Nigeria, and I think it's very, very important. The barriers are there, but I've seen that they can be surmounted. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Russell. And I'll just speak on to your last point and pose my next question to Dio, who's the head of corporate affairs at Unilever, on how do we create a conducive environment so that the demand side, the corporates can actually open up and expand these opportunities for women. So Unilever is one of the gender leaders across the world and made some very bold commitments to getting more women involved in their businesses. And I just wanted you, Dio, to share some best practices that are helping your companies to work more with women. And I would like you to spend a bit of time specifically on women in distribution networks, where women are helping you distribute your products across the country. One of the case studies that we published there in Nigeria's last year, we found a lot of women in FMCG sector actually sit at the bottom of the pyramid. So I want to know how, some of the things your company is deploying, but also how exactly are you getting more women into your distribution network?
Okay, thank you very much. And permit me if I respond to that in 3 main buckets. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I can't start without telling you about who we are in Unilever. The first thing is to understand the very ethos for which Unilever stands for. Our vision in Unilever is to make sustainable commonplace. This means that we're a purpose-led organization, and issues of sustainability or sustainable development at the very heart of what we stand for. Hence, the conversations that we're having today in terms of inclusive business strategies are at the very forefront of our agenda. Equality, fairness, and inclusivity are the heart of sustainable development, and they're the only way to ensure that prosperity leaves no one behind, if I may say that. My global CEO, Alan Job, once said that women's equality is the single greatest unlock for social and economic development globally. So some of the insights that we've also had has also helped us to shape our responses and our agenda in this regard. One thing that we know is that from lessons learned from other crises, Ebola, Zika, and the financial crisis of 2008, and this current information that we have on the COVID-19 pandemic, economic crises and epidemics usually have a disproportionate impact on certain segments of the population, especially, women, and so inequalities in the world are often then widened as a result of this pandemics or epidemics or economic crisis that we have. Typically, we know that women who are empowered, we know that women who are empowered are playing a vital part in creating the prosperous economies in which our business can grow. So women have a lot to bring to the table. And we know that increasingly, there are opportunities within our own value chain, that women can play in nicely. Worldwide, women are set to control 64% of consumer spending and are the fastest growing group of consumers. So equality for women in the global labor force would basically add up to 28 trillion to the global economy by 2025, according to a McKinsey Global Institute report. So that's very significant, or a very significant opportunity for any business, especially one like us. And knowing the fact that 70% of our consumers are women, it even makes it more pertinent for us to do something about it. But as the World Economic Forum Gender Gap Report 2020 also shows, the current rate of progress, at the current rate of progress, women will have to wait nearly 100 years to close the overall gender gap. So what are we doing? What do we do? And what are the best practices that we bring to bear? There's several things. And let me first of all start by saying that the first thing is that women, like Angela has said, face a lot of issues. One is that some of the strongest forces behind this persistent gender gaps are harmful social norms and stereotypes that limit expectations of what women can or should do. So Yeshua spoke a lot to the fact that sometimes women are constrained, and these are some of the things that we find in the work that we do. One of the things that we do is that we look at the rights of women. Equal rights and safety are the building blocks for inclusive development. We can't begin to foster equal rights within an environment without tackling the issue of rights. Our aim is to advance human rights in our operation and extended value chain and challenge harmful gender norms. Therefore, we seek for increasing investment to be able to tackle things like gender-based violence by addressing some of the systemic issues such as harmful norms and stereotypes, which are often the cause of, the problems that we see. And what do we do in that regard? Forged partnerships with organizations like the Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team in this respect, where we're then taking the awareness and the education, to the forefront. And we've started by taking this awareness and education into our very own organization. The other thing is we're very active. We're active member of the UNGC, United Nations Global Compact network in Nigeria, where we sit on the board with NSC, if I may say so. And UNGC is also at the forefront of creating awareness of change in the area of human rights along the supply chain broadly. Internally, we also have all these policies that we also, foster to help women thrive. So we're a very, very gender-friendly organization. Then specifically to what we're talking about today in terms of the value chain and our supply chain, and we've provided opportunities for women across the value chain, and specifically along our last mile distribution channel in the rural area. We're now increasingly focusing on procurement. So, but within a distribution network, we provide access to training, financial literacy skills, bookkeeping, and general marketing practices. And right today, we have about over approximately 4,000 women in our last mile distribution program called Shakti, which means empowered or to raise up. We work with some nonprofit organizations, so we forge partnerships to help us to be able to deliver these programs. Growing Business Foundation is one that we work with in this area. But again, I must also mention the United Nations Global Compact Network in Nigeria, where we now have a program. So one of the programs that we have is to also look at female-headed households, across the country. And because we find out that there's a lot that we can do with those female-headed households, where we can also have some programs and some initiatives that can also bring them into the value chain or the supply chain of large corporates such as ours, to be able to reduce the incidence of poverty. And we also have some solid case studies in our backward integration program, and one of which is headed by a woman, a very powerful woman in a company called Sultry. Sultry is owned by a woman who is get to be one of our main suppliers of a strategic component for one of our raw materials. It's an agro-based enterprise, and she works with farmers in southwestern Nigeria. And some of those farmers are also women.
Dio, I have to cut you short because of our time. Would you like to wind up?
Yes, okay, thank you very much. So there's so many things that we do in this regard, and I think these are some of the, just to again close, because I can go on, and I think Angela has also just mentioned some of the things that we do. But on a closing note is also the work that we do with SMEs, in Nigeria, where we're also working with them, the entrepreneurs, and we started last year to give grants, to entrepreneurs in this area. So there's so many things that we do, and that we're also advocating for other large corporates such as us to do. And I think going forward, I think what we then need to do, maybe collaboratively as a result of this session, is to then be able to articulate, some ways of, very organized ways of then having this kind of interventions with large corporates.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dio, for sharing that with us. I'm now going to move this conversation to focus on the women-owned SMEs and how, we can support them to tackle some of those barriers. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, the barrier number one is access to finance. And we have Ayo from Access Bank. And I just wanted you, Ayo, to share with us, how has Access Bank managed to create a women's value proposition in a world where the women market, clientele are viewed to be as more riskier, and also just share with us how you have supported women embedded in corporate value chains, and how can you, the banks and the corporate sector, collaborate to ensure that these women are fully supported. Ayo, you're on mute. Could you unmute?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. All right, so thank you very much, Anne. Access Bank, we're very excited to be part of this discourse because solving the challenges and the barriers that women face, especially around accessing finance, is one that is close to our heart. And for us at Access Bank, we have built a women's market segment that is anchored around 4 fundamental areas of need for women, specifically in the area of access to finance, access to information and knowledge, access to market, and access to technology. So these 4 programs are a holistic approach to be able to create impact for women-owned businesses, and women, not just the women-owned businesses, women and family, as well as women professionals. Specifically, in order to be able to expand lending opportunities to women, I know I get asked this question a lot. What we have done is that we've created programs that takes into consideration some of the challenges that women face in the area of collateral through our WPower loans and cash flow lending programs. And some of these programs also help us to be able to build financial information, which is utilized to be able to assess loan eligibility for women, and it's priced at 15% per annum. So in recognition of the impact of COVID on women-owned businesses, especially for those that are operating in vulnerable sectors, what we have done is to work with them to be able to provide moratorium, to be able to help them with loan restructure and rescheduling as may be required. We have also accelerated our plans to be able to digitize our business loans, which has facilitated loan programs from women, especially when you take into consideration the childcare challenges like Angela talked about earlier on. So this way, we are able to facilitate applications receive applications from those women even from the comfort of their homes. We also recognize that a majority of women are not as financially literate as men, and so we have various capacity building programs that focuses on helping women to be able to access information that would help them to be able to better manage their business through best-in-class faculties like IFC, to provide mini MBA programs that are designed specifically with women in mind. The eligibility to be part of some of these mini MBA programs, they are determined through a very well publicized pitch-a-thon program. So far, that particular one for 2020 has attracted over 40,000 applications from women in Nigeria and some key markets in Africa. So specifically for this program, last year we selected only about 50 women from those that applied, but we're leveraging technology this year to be able to increase the number of women who can benefit from the program. And at the end of this program, generally women get grants at seed capital, they get funding to also be able to support their growth. But beyond the money that the women get at the end of the program, everybody wins because they all learn on how to be able to better manage their businesses. And aside this pitch-a-thon initiative, we also have a digital learning platform. We have a learning management platform right now that houses over 100 curriculum courses that focus on various areas that poses as challenges for women. And this platform can also be accessed from the comfort of homes to learn on any particular area of interest. The other program, one of the anchor program is also our access to market initiatives. And what it is that we have done, and we have, especially on the shift to digital business, we have been able to provide websites and e-commerce bouquet that are very affordable. We have been investing quite heavily as well in educating women-owned businesses to be able to shift their business model to digital, following the outbreak of the pandemic. And we are entering into partnerships that is going to help them to train them on how they can manage their businesses online, most especially for our borrowing customers. We've greatly encouraged the use of digital banking at this period as part of our access to technology programs, and it's been quite encouraging to see how many women have been able to take advantage of all of this program. So specifically to how we can promote more participation, how financial services can promote more participation in corporate value chain, in partnership with companies. I'm just going to highlight about 6 specific initiatives that Access Bank is currently running. A key fundamental and a key requirement is that any organization that wants to be able to drive this must have management buy-in. And at Access Bank, we don't pay lip service to supporting women. So even up to our executive management, there's an intent, there's an inspiration, and there's the action. There's also a supporting action to this intent to being able to support women-owned businesses. We have a dedicated team that looks after women-owned businesses. that look after women professionals and that look after women and family programs through our W initiative. So that's one. And on another hand, like I mentioned earlier on, we have the Pitch-a-thon initiative. So this year we've already received about 38,000 applications. And we are going to have about 100 women that will be selected to make a pitch that is going to earn them funding. And this year, we are particularly expanding the opportunity for them to be able to get funding beyond the bank. We're also putting together a group of investors. I think about 5 investors that these women will get opportunity to pitch to. So from the bank, we have a total of about 10 million naira that will be awarded to about 5 winners, and there will be opportunity for additional 5 who would be able to pitch to these private investors to be able to get or access technical assistance that would help them with practical and experiential learning on how to be able to do their business better, that would help them around mentoring. So we also have, this is the third one now, we have dedicated distributorship financing that is targeted at women. What it is that we have found is that women-owned distributorship ventures, they usually outlast ventures that are solely run by men. And this is because we find that women are usually more resilient and patient to navigate the rigor, which is part of the, distributorship value chain business. I believe this is supposed to be enough incentive for corporate to be very deliberate about being more inclusive. And I really applaud the work that Unilever is doing in this area. So during the pandemic specifically, especially for distributors that are involved in essential goods, the lockdown was a challenge in terms of where they were going to be able to deposit cash. We're very deliberate about remaining open to collect cash from them, and which were processed on our e-collection platforms. These were part of the initiative that we have introduced to be able to support the cashless policies of the regulators. We had virtual talk that had our executive management in attendance to discuss pain points with these distributors, to work with them to deliberate on solutions that we eventually acted upon to be able to support them during the pandemic.
Thank you so much. We are short on time, unfortunately, but I hope we can continue that conversation, especially around distributorship financing for women-owned businesses. Now, I want to just continue with that topic and turn on to Adenike. In addition to supporting women with skill building, you also help them source alternative financing, because we know the formal financial services space is not so much friendly for women, and they need to be able to access other sources of financing. And I just want you to let us know, what have you learned? What works for women, especially when it comes to accessing financing, and what can all financial services providers learn to be able to serve more women?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Anne. It's my pleasure to share our experiences at Faith Foundation and what we've also learned and are still learning on this journey to better enabling women access finance and non-financial services and support to grow their businesses. Like I said, Faith has been around for 20 years. We're 20 years exactly to this year. And one of the things we've done in the last 3 to 4 years is also to step back and say, what are the critical demographics and sectors that are very crucial to growing the economy and require much more intentional support. And so in looking at our programming needs and supporting women specifically, one of the key data that really came out to us was there's a recent SMEs data that was published last year by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics and SMEs that talked about MSMEs and the number of MSMEs in Nigeria. If you look a bit more into that data, you will see that the number of women in the micro segments, we probably have about an even balance between women-led businesses and men-led businesses in the micro segment. But when you now look at SME businesses, and by the way, micro segments are about 99% of Nigerian businesses, and then less than 99% are in the SME segment. When you look at the women-led businesses in the SME segment, less than a quarter, so about 22% of them are within SMEs. So either women are dropping off or they're not growing enough. So one of the things that we did in the redesign of our growth focus program was having a gender lens approach to it and taking a design thinking approach to how we built and designed our financial and non-financial linkage programs, but also sharing a lot of our learnings and experiences along the way with our partners who are working with us on that. And I'll talk about 4 specific areas. Now, if you look at the predominant sectors that the women played in, a lot of them played in education, wholesale, and retail trade, which is very critical to our conversations, manufacturing, and hospitality. And those were sectors that had supply chain disruptions and also were impacted by the lockdown and social distancing rules for about 3 to 4 months. So one of the things we did with one of our partners, SBN in particular, was to say, how do we provide immediate cash flow and financial support? We did a survey to assess the impact of COVID-19 on Nigerian businesses, and we surveyed over 1,900 businesses. I will tell you that in the conversations we had, where the SMEs were talking about the impact on being able to make their payroll, the feedback from the women were different from the men. So most of the SMEs, in the effect that they had, were struggling to pay the wage. But when we spoke with the women-led SMEs, their focus was not just on the impact of being able to pay the salaries to their employees, but the ripple effect it would have on not being able to pay an employee salary who was a mother or a father and who had to pay rent and all of that. So with that gender lens approach, one of our partners in one of our accelerator program designed a special fund to support employee payroll for that particular program because of the impact that because what was now happening was that the women leading the businesses were dipping into their personal finances just to be able to pay the payroll because of the ripple effect that it had. So immediate cash flow support to being able to support wage bills for businesses is something that particularly within this time was very important. And then also speaking around knowledge, that's importance again of separating business and financial personal and business finances. You know, again, at this time, that's something that has been very crucial in the way we structured and designed our program, but particularly at this time where a lot of women, so when you look at the data, more women spend more of their income on supporting their families and supporting their friends than men. So at this point in time, again, there's that need in saying, okay, as you're thinking about your family, how can you structure that thinking in such a way that would also not kill your business within that space? The other thing that is also important to think about was customer and revenue generation strategies. Ayodele has spoken a bit around enabling digital knowledge, in being able to understand digital tools and knowledge that are available. One thing we should all know is that women have a faster adaptation to digital technology and application. So while it may be that less women in the past are using digital tools and technology less, studies have shown that when you put men or women both together for this, they adapt faster. We even see that when we do special digital technology focused courses and programs. So one of the things that one of our partners, one of the largest technology companies has done is now also create special programs that help women to be able to develop e-commerce variants or channels within their websites. So helping them to understand how do you expand the market, but how do you also take power and knowledge into your hand and develop that e-commerce channel into your hand. Part of the other things we are doing also around helping them to improve revenue generation is also pulling resources together. I'm sorry, I'm one of those who don't believe that women cannot work together. We've seen that very well at Faith Foundation. In fact, I can point to 3 women groups that came up proactively on their own to come together and form an association, and then came to Faith to help them establish that association and link them with a large corporate, because individually they were not enough to supply that corporate, but they were doing the same thing. One of those businesses were supplying PKO within the Agribusiness Accelerator Program, and they came together because 3 of them could establish that company without our own initial prompting. So we see that time and time again, that women can work together. women do work together and effectively work together and are able to do that. So part of the strategies we've also done in one of our incubator programs is to bring women within the same value chain together who individually, like we said, cannot supply a particular corporate. Have conversations with those corporates, better understand better understand the needs and the gaps of that corporate, and get the women to be able to establish consistency standards and procedures to be able to address and supply that corporate together. The last thing I'll talk about is capacity. So again, around capacity, ensuring that if they're going to meet a funder or an investor, being able to have the governance enablement to also be attractive to the investor. So CAMA 2020 law just came out, and there's flexibility around company secretaries or audited account. But one of the things we've been telling our women entrepreneurs is to actually ensure that while there is that flexibility, make sure you have your audited accounts and statements. Make sure you have that, because that puts you in much more greater and stronger standing when we're having conversations with investors and investments on this. So I'll end now. Hopefully there'll be more opportunity for me to share a lot of the key strategies that we're doing. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Adenike. There surely will be more opportunities coming in the next 2.5 years or so. Just a gentle reminder to our audience that the Q&A chat is open, so please post your Q&A. We'll have a look at this shortly after. And now to my last question. This is all about capacity building, Bamkole. Access Bank training capacity building, Faith Foundation capacity building, skills building with DHL. So it seems like the market is oversaturated with people who train, and you sit in the academia space where you are able to link the input to the output. Can you share with us, what impact skills building, especially at a time in the pandemic where new skills are actually required to keep running these businesses? Have you seen any evidence that, this capacity building and skills building work actually has a performance impact for women-owned businesses over the years of running the institute at the Lagos Business School?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm the director at the Enterprise Development Center, and we are a sister school to the Lagos Business School. So we sit in the same campus, but while Lagos Business School sort out the large businesses, we focus on the small businesses, just to make a correction. And for EDC, just a quick background, over 60% of our learners are women. On our management, we have 75% of our management are women. And indeed, we have a gender desk that is headed by a deputy director. So our focus on women is very intentional over the last 17, 18 years. Now, when you talk about capacity building, it goes beyond training. And I think a few in the market makes these mistakes. Capacity building is a combination of training, which I always equate to a starter in a 3-course meal, where the main dish is actually the support services that goes with that training. And this will include things like mentoring, advisory services, hand-holding, and so on and so forth. Okay, so having said that, there is a popular saying that, that says, when you train or when you educate a woman, you build a nation. And this is so true in the last almost 2 decades that we have been working with women. And I'm going to just speak to 3 of them. And I also agree with Nike that it is not true, at least from our experience, that women don't collaborate. In fact, women collaborate a lot. It's just that the way in which they collaborate is different from the way men do collaborate. And I will share 1 or 2 examples around this. The first example I am going to share is that of Goldman Sachs, 10,000 women. We had Femi Olayebi of Femi Bags. In the last few years, not only will I say she makes one of the best bags in Nigeria today, she has moved beyond self and started to look at the entire value chain. And so she created the Lagos Leather Week. And for that, she's able to bring all stakeholders, both at the SME level, the financiers, government, to talk about the entire value chain. And so, yes, women solve their problem, but they look at the bigger picture. And in doing that, she collaborates and brings all other men and women together to be able to make that happen, to solve that problem. And in fact, recently, she's solving problems around COVID. And the people that she's working with, making PPEs and going to be distributing across 5 states in Southwest Nigeria, she's working extensively with women. So I don't believe that women don't work with women. The second one, which is also COVID focused, for me is a program that we are running with Standard Chartered Bank, and it's called Women in Tech. And Women in Tech deliberately is helping women to make that shift that Ayo talks about. And that shift we're seeing, just like Nika also said, it is also not true. They are actually very fast adaptive learners in this space. A classic example for me will be Obi Aladejebi of Stores Harmony. During this particular period, not only was she focusing on her own stores and everything, she created it and opened it up as a platform for others to be able to have access to market. And for me, this is very critical because all of a sudden that pandemic opens that opportunity for her. And not only are you able to sell on that platform, she's also able to provide access to funding, both to the consumers and also to the merchants. So women are making deep. So when you go back and you say, when you educate a woman, indeed, you are building a nation. I'll use the last example, which is the one that was sponsored by the World Bank. The program was Women X, and Lara Rawa of Eventi Cocktails. Now, so she makes, in my opinion, fantastic cocktails as well. Local cocktails made from local ingredients and so on and so forth. Trying to promote what we call the Nigerian inspired cocktails. But once she created that and she's doing well, the next stage is how can we look at the entire value chain? And so she created what is now known as the Lagos Cocktail Week. Last year that I was there, we had over hundreds and hundreds of different kind of entrepreneurs in the entire value chain coming together for 1 week to be able to, in fact, I was like ordinary cocktail, and you have all these people from bartenders to all kinds of, logistics people and everything like that. So for me, what capacity building does to these people is to open up the way they think. It is no longer about their business alone. It is about the entire value chain. And when pandemics or situations like COVID-19 strikes, yes, they can retreat for a week or two, but immediately, because their capacity has been built, they become, they innovate very quickly to be able to say, how else can we do things? I was stunned in one of, during the COVID period, a caterer, for instance, who, of course, we know that most of them, once the restaurant shuts down, they follow the kitchen, and then from kitchen they can deliver. That was standard. However, the one that excited me most was this caterer who decided to focus on taking what you will call a 5-star breakfast to homes. And so when you have a celebration, you can bring people in brunch, and then maybe just for 6 to 8 family people on a celebration event, they will actually take a 5-star hotel experience to your homes. That for me was wonderful. And women have been able to do all of this. So I wanted to say, for me, in closing, I would say capacity building is much more than just training. It takes the entire notch, and I will stop at that.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Bankole, for so beautifully wrapping up our panel discussion. And thank you so much, distinguished panelists, for your contribution. I think it's such a broad topic that we need to spend a bit more time and also just looking at each and every one of those subtopics more closely. So we have a couple of questions, but unfortunately, we are past top of the hour. We are 10 minutes past 3 o'clock my time. But I just wanted to pose just one quick question, an inquiry from one of our attendees to you, Nike. It's around opportunities that have arisen and are accessible to women-owned businesses through Faith Foundation as part of your COVID response programs. Are there any?
Yes, there actually is. There's a particular program that we are just launching with one of our partners called the Business Recovery Program. And it takes in the broad approach of looking at capacity building to support in helping specific big businesses in target growth sectors to reopen their businesses, manage the crisis, looking towards the value chain, connecting with specific corporate partners along their value chain, but also more importantly, understanding the regulatory needs and requirements to be able to also build the resilience around their business. So I'll be happy to talk more. I can exchange messages with the person too.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure to have this conversation with you all, and indeed our pleasure at IFC to be able to work with the NSE on this webinar series. So the Nigeria2Equal Programme activities continue, and we will be in touch with you to let you know what is next in our line of activities. I would like now to hand this over back to the NSE, to Olumide, who's the head of corporate communications, to wrap this up for us and give us the closing remarks. Over to you, Olumide.
Thank you so much, Han. And I think it has been a very, very illuminating conversation today. I have two girls and I'm married to an entrepreneur. I know the challenges she's currently facing. At some point during my work, I had to devote some time, to help her strategize because she's in a business that has been impacted not just by COVID, but even by the currency situation in Nigeria as well. And sometimes we will joke about it like, maybe you should have stuck to your HR job, than trying to be, this CEO. But I like, the various perspectives that our speakers have brought, to the conversation this afternoon. I want to believe that the conversation should continue. The journey to bridging those gaps, for women, whether in the workplace, entrepreneur, and all worth a view. I mean, it's a journey that all of us have to really contribute to. So I want to thank all the panelists, for making our time, to participate on this session. I want to thank all the participants as well for, joining us as well. I hope, this session has been what you imagine it to be. If it is not, own hand responsible, but if it is, own me responsible for that. I mean, it has been a great collaboration with IFC. It was quite an easy synergy, when they wanted to partner with us about gender advancement and bridging the gaps. Because NSC on its own part, is a gender-focused, organization that promotes diversity. And we try to walk the talk, both in terms of the ratio of employee male to female ratios, and in terms of even female in management positions. And that now we've extended that to the board. A few years down the line, it was an all-male board that we have, but today we have about over 27% of that, and we'll continue to make progress in that direction. We're probably one of the first companies in Nigeria, if I can call us, to start looking at issues, that women face, especially around, birth and the rest of that. We have a crèche that, they can bring kids to, up to when they're 18 months, is free of charge, it's not paid for. And various other ways we continue to support, women in their efforts. So I believe that, the conversation have to keep on going. And I thank each and every one of us, for coming this afternoon. I wish us, safety, good health in this period as we navigate this new normal that we've all found ourselves. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Olumide, and thanks everyone. And we look forward to connecting again. If you see an email from IFC and NSC on Nigeria2Equal, please walk this journey with us. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you very much, Anne. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Bye, Yeshua.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.